What if I told you that Carl Jung uncovered a hidden force within human? Relationships so destructive, so cunning that understanding it could save you from years of emotional trauma? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn may forever change how you interpret manipulation, love, and control. Jung once said something that sends shivers down the spine. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what happens when someone uses that insight, not for healing, but as a tool of control? Jung believed that every human carries within them something he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we're ashamed of, deny, or bury. But here's where it gets terrifying. Some people don't just carry a shadow, they become it. They shape their entire lives around hiding their darkness behind a false personality. Jung discovered that these individuals, what we now understand as narcissists, create something he called the false self. This isn't just someone pretending to be better than they are. It's an entire fabrication, a mask built to cover up unbearable feelings of shame, inadequacy, and self-loathing. But Jung didn't stop there. He uncovered something even darker. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling dazed? Like your memory betrayed you? Have you ever questioned your emotions, your truth, your very sanity? According to Jung, this confusion is not accidental. It's a weapon. Narcissists require your emotional reactions, your attention, your validation, just to maintain their identity. Without it, their false self begins to collapse. That's why they won't let you go. That's why they reappear when you try to break free. That's why it feels impossible to move on. Jung identified a psychological mechanism that narcissists twist and turn into a tool of emotional destruction. It's called projection. Projection is when we unconsciously assign our own unwanted feelings to someone else. Everyone does it. But narcissists refine it into psychological warfare. When a narcissist calls you selfish, it's because they are. When they accuse you of being unstable, they're showing you their own instability. When they label you as manipulative, they are pulling from their own tactics. Jung said projection happens when we can't face truths about ourselves. Narcissists not only avoid these truths, they throw them at you like emotional explosives. Worse still, over time you begin to absorb this toxicity. Their accusations dig into your psyche like infected wounds. You begin to believe you are the problem. How often have you apologized for things you didn't do? How often have you wondered if you were truly too sensitive? Too much, too difficult? Jung recognized this as toxic projection embedding itself into your soul. The narcissist doesn't just damage your emotions, they reprogram your identity. So why does it work? Why do we fall for it? Jung believed our understanding of reality is built through relationships, and narcissists twist this to their advantage. They don't just lie, they replace your reality with their own. They gaslight you. That never happened. You're overreacting. You're imagining things. These aren't just dismissals. These are attacks on your ability to trust your own mind. And they're incredibly effective. Why? Because they blend lies with partial truths. They'll admit to the facts, then twist the story, the intent, the emotional tone until you're completely unmoored. You start to think, maybe it is me. Jung believed true psychological health, what he called individuation, requires connection to your inner truth. Narcissists destroy that connection. They make you doubt your memories, your instincts, even your intuition. The most insidious part? They don't always do this openly. Sometimes they're sweet, loving, attentive. They give you just enough care to keep you hooked. And then, boom, the punishment returns. Jung would recognize this cycle as trauma bonding, a psychological addiction formed through alternating reward and pain. It rewires your brain. One moment, you're seen. The next, you're shattered. And they know exactly where to strike. They target your childhood wounds, the parts of you that were never healed. They study your fears, your insecurities, your hopes. Then, they use that emotional map to control you. You're not addicted to the narcissist. You're addicted to the brief relief they offer from the pain they caused. It's a cruel loop. And Jung saw it for what it was, a system built on emotional dependency. Now, what if I told you there are people who literally feed on this? Chaos, emotional vampires. As Jung might say, he believed every human interaction involves an exchange of energy. In healthy relationships, that exchange nourishes both people. But some individuals don't give back. They only take. They thrive on drama. They create chaos just to watch you react. That reaction is fuel. it's how they survive. Ever feel completely drained after talking to them? That's not coincidence. That's extraction. Your emotional turmoil, anger, fear, sadness, becomes their lifeblood. And when you're calm, peaceful, they can't feed off you, so they manufacture a new crisis, just enough to suck you back in. Jung believed this reactivity is what keeps you trapped, not because you love them, but because you're caught in an emotional game you didn't realize you were playing. And here's where it gets truly dangerous. Jung warned that isolation increases vulnerability to manipulation, and narcissists know this. They work, slowly and subtly, to disconnect you from others, not by force, but by confusion, guilt, and shame. They turn you against your friends. They suggest your family doesn't really care. They create rifts, false narratives, distractions, emergencies, until it's easier just to be with them. Jung called this psychological imprisonment, where the abuser becomes the only source of validation, the only mirror you trust. When did you stop sharing your pain with friends? When did you start defending their behavior to others? You didn't isolate yourself. They made isolation feel safer. And when you're cut off from outside perspectives, their version of reality becomes your only one. But here's what they don't want you to realize. Jung believed that consciousness, awareness, is the antidote to manipulation. The moment you see the pattern, the moment you recognize their tactics, the spell breaks. They need your emotional reaction to survive. When you stop responding, stop trying to explain, stop seeking approval, their power dissolves. Because the truth is, narcissists are fragile. Their whole system depends on your confusion, your compliance. Once you see through the mask, they're exposed for what they are, a scared, fragmented self hiding behind a performance. You don't need them. They need you. They need your validation, your attention, your emotional supply to keep their illusion alive. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And narcissists fear that more than anything, because your authenticity threatens their control. When you reclaim your reality, your memories, your voice, your worth, they lose access to your mind. Here's Jung's final liberating insight. The person who seemed so powerful, so intimidating, so in control, was never strong. They were always a frightened child, hiding in an adult body wearing a psychological mask. Your awareness is their kryptonite. Your boundaries are your protection. Your self-knowledge is your freedom. You were never weak. You were never broken. You were only unaware of the game being played. Now that you see it, everything changes. As Jung once said, he who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. You've awakened. And that, your consciousness, is your greatest power.